Yo, what up, world? It's your boy C's from thec'slife.com. Welcome back to the people's favorite channel on the internet. Today's video is for documentary purposes. We are currently conducting an investigation, and I want to consolidate all the information that I've gathered in this video so it's easily accessible for me and for others who've been doing due diligence for the better part of 2-3 years now. And we're talking about AMC stock, the journey to MOASS, the journey to the mother of all short squeezes. And within my investigation, I've come to like a theory of what I think is happening. I have no, factual evidence aside from what others have reported, what's out there in the media. So I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So this is purely speculation. This is just, me starting to string things together. You have that big board where you're trying to connect the dots. So this is me connecting the dots, right? So I'm going to shout out a couple of people that are on the same page with me. They're coming to that same conclusion that I'm coming to, but I don't quite know where they're going yet. So this is why I'm consolidating all the information so that, we can sort of talk about it moving forward. Anyway, so without any further ado, right, we're going to talk about Common Sense Investor. So the Common Sense Investor, I'm giving him a shout out. He released this video a couple of days ago, right? And he was talking about how the SEC wants us to forgive the phantom shares that are out. Phantom, aka synthetic shares that's in the market, right? So that we can just surgically remove all of these synthetic shares, which is like a tumor, which is like a cancer in our financial markets, right? How can we surgically remove this cancer without bringing any attention to to ourselves, right? So now what got me with what the video that he put together was, we're gonna play it, was how he's saying we can't think from the perspective of the retail investors, right? We can't think from that perspective. We have to think from the SEC, right? The government, the feds, and we got to think of it from the hedge funds point of view, right? Like, they're the ones that have this major fire in their hands, right? There's a burning building that they set on fire. The SEC is the fireman. Gary Gensler is the fire chief. And they're like, do we let this building just burn to the ground and collect the insurance money? But the insurance money that we collect is not ours. It belongs to retail. So how are we going to give them the money once we, right? So this is what they're like, this is the perspective that you got to think from. Now, if you watched The Big Short and Margin Call, Brooklyn, come on. If you think of from Margin Call, if you see those videos, that movie, right, and Too Big to Fail, there was that back door. There's so much to cover. There's so much to uncover. There was that back door, that back room meeting that the SEC or the head of the Fed, right? He had them in the meeting, all the banks, even the small banks, right? The private banks come in and take the money. Like, yo, you gonna take this money, right? And I already played that in the previous video too, where I played that whole scene. So I'll probably link to it somewhere, but they got them to go into the back room and have that conversation so that they can make the decisions for us. But now there is 4 million strong plus retail investors, individual investors, right? So it's not just Like, and we all have our own minds and we're trying to think alike. Right? So it got me thinking, like, yo, they're in the back room and there is nobody that represents us, right? Back there talking with them. There's no like head of the retail investors, which should be the SEC, right? The SEC should be the head for the retail investors, but clearly not the case. They should be in the back room representing us, right? But we have no representative. If you ask the average ape or retail investor, they want to cash out. They want their squeeze, like pay, like yo, just pay me, give me the money, and then I get to decide what I get to do with it, right? But it's not that simple. So I'm like, all right, let me try to envision myself in this room, right? What is the conversations that they're having, right? So it leads me to this first video. This comes from the Common Sense Investor. So this is just a clip of Patrick Byrne, the CEO of, or the former CEO of Overstock. And for those who are researching this time in history, like look up Patrick Byrne and look up all he had to go through to win his lawsuit, and what they subsequently did to his integrity and his character afterwards. Like, don't believe what they said about this man, but just go and see what they'll typically do to you if you speak up against the elites or the establishment, right? So Patrick Byrne, this is the first clip.
A normal stock trade is you're buying stock from me, you give me money, and I'll give you stock. That's called settlement. Believe it or not, there's a loophole that exists in the system. And when the time comes for me to give you the stock that you bought from me, I can give you just an IOU, basically, for some stock. Now, you or I couldn't do this, but big hedge funds and prime brokers have ways of doing this. And all they're really giving is an IOU. And you never know that. You get your brokerage statement from Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley, and it says you got the stock. Well, no stock ever came. All you got was an IOU. But what happened, what seems to have happened, is some hedge funds have figured out how to manipulate this loophole and inject hundreds of millions or even billions of these, what are in fact fake shares, into the market. Well, here's people on the record in the back offices of Wall Street, the transfer agents who actually count votes, that say, with quotes like, "This is positively criminal. We regularly do not have any idea who's entitled to vote and who isn't. We regularly get 2 to 3 times as many votes as there are shares." Now, as crazy as all that sounds, the New York Stock Exchange did a study on 341 elections, found overvoting in all 341. If it just really happened by random human error, you'd see these fake shares, these phantom shares scattered around the market, like peanut butter spread over a sandwich. They'd be spread evenly. Well, the SEC hired an economist named Leslie Bonney to study this, and she did this statistical analysis and saw where they're concentrated, and she says, no way this is happening by random human error. It's massive, it's endemic in the system, and it's clearly being used to manipulate. It's clearly being targeted. It's easy to create a lot of misdirection and smoke and mirrors about, you couldn't do what I'm about to describe, you couldn't do to IBM or Microsoft. And you just flood the market with fake shares in their companies, and you can crack the market. And if you can do this while you have a couple of your shill journalists just write stories after stories banging the company, you can basically drop it to nothing. So is that going on? Well, 3 years ago, the SEC was saying this is a myth, this isn't a myth. They finally faced enough public pressure that they passed a very tepid Regulation Show, and it said that they were going to start disclosing the names of companies that are seeing excessive numbers of these phantom shares in their stock. And they actually said on their website, the SEC website actually said, we have to grandfather, that is, we have to forgive all the phantom shares that are already in the system because we're afraid of the volatility that might result from large pre-existing open positions. Now that's bizarre, because a month or a year earlier they'd been saying this isn't going on, it's a myth, it's all wacky. And then they came out and said, well, okay, we're going to try to do something about it, but we have to forgive all that's in the system, because if we don't, it's going to crack the system.
So there you have it. You have Patrick Byrne telling you exactly what happened to his company and his stock, right? They like flooded the market with synthetic shares of the overstock shares, and what happened was it was bankrupting the company. He got hip to it, and yo, trust me, do your research on him, like watch his interviews, and you'll be blown away of what we're currently living through. Now, towards the tail end of that quote, he says that the SEC said, okay, you got me. You got something here. We're going to try to do something about it. Now, keyword is try. Now, if you're living through, this time right now, you're saying like, it doesn't seem like you guys tried at all, right? It doesn't seem like you guys tried at all. And what it does seem like is like you got his stock up out of here and got him burned. And now hopefully this doesn't happen again. And unfortunately, if you look at AMC, GME, Bed Bath & Beyond, all these meme stocks, it appears that it is continuing to happen again. Now, instead of having to deal with one CEO, you have to deal with 4 to 5, maybe 8 million investors. Now, will they come to us and say, hey guys, you got us, you caught us. We're going to try to do something again, but you have to forgive these phantom shares. Now, I'm not saying that this is what they're going to do. What I'm saying is they're probably talking about it. They're probably talking about it. They're probably in their back room like, yo, somebody's going to have to go to these retail investors, and someone is going to have to convince these retail investors to forgive the phantom shares. Now, this is another point where I'll string in together. Now, only time will tell, but there's a lot of people that are against this reverse stock split. And one of these people that are very vocal about this reverse stock split is Donahue George. So Donahue George, shout you out to. He's been in this play since the beginning as well. And he's been putting in work. He's filed lawsuits, he's done et cetera. And now there are people out there that are trying to make him seem a little crazy. But with me, I don't care who you are, your background or anything. I don't even trust anyone, right? I just need to know what evidence that you have to back up your claims, right? And if you do have evidence, can you present it to us? That's all I care about. Now, Donahue George, he does have evidence on his side, and also some of them mixed in with some speculation, and sometimes it's theoretical, right? Not always all the way factual, but he has some weight to what he's claiming. Now, it might not be pointing in the right direction, aka like your settlement times and et cetera, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and what he presented to us is like something to think about. And they might be, like, his argument is they might be trying to remove these synthetic shares with a reverse stock split. Now, let's go back to what I was saying in the beginning. Now, listen, check this point out. When you are needing someone to go and speak to the retail investors, you're going to have to present someone that they trust. And who do retail investors trust currently? they trust the CEO, Adam Aaron, right? Now, Ryan Cohen of GameStop, they trust him as well. So they already went through their stock split, and we're seeing what's happening with that, right? There's other stocks that just went into another stock split. There was Sundial that went to a stock split, and you haven't heard a peep or anything about synthetic shares, right? That play, I don't know, but park to the side. There's Cosm. There's all these other plays that's going through like these stock splits or reverse stock splits, right? So first they introduce more shares into, they dilute them, then they combine them, and then they split them, right? So now we're presented with this with AMC shares. Now, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't know. This is why I want to consolidate all this information so that, you know, I'm like, okay, I did talk about that. I did cover that. I did play this clip. I did play that video that I gathered, and then just put it out there so that, you know, when that screenplay starts to, because I have to make a movie about this. It's like, I love espionage movies. Like right now there is Jack Ryan on Amazon. I'm in love with that Tom Clancy characters and stuff. Your Batmans, your James Bond and all that. You know what I mean? It's first of all, it's time for them to cast a brother. And if I'm making a movie, I'm casting myself. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to get busy, but that's neither here nor there. But I kind of like these things. But before we get too carried away, let's let Donahue George present his theories, because what he just released with his latest video is like perfect for this little segment right here, because it's just going to show you a screenshot of what's currently happening from like a 2-year span. All right.
Between Citadel, Citicorp, Bank of America, and all these other institutions, they have over $2 trillion of shares sold but not bought. I mean, this has to be the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. So they sold over $2 trillion worth of something, of stock, into the market, sold it to us, to idiots, who they call dumb money, who they have no respect for. They sold us over $2 trillion worth of shares that they never even purchased yet. And technically, they don't never have to purchase it, because they could keep kicking the can down the road. And let me simplify it, or put it in a different context. Let's say I was selling cars, and I sold $2 trillion worth of cars, but I never delivered them. I took the money, I issued you titles for the cars, I just printed up titles for the cars, but I never delivered you the cars. And then every time you ask for the cars, I tell you, you'll get your car next week. You get your car next week. Well, I'm from Brooklyn. We the went and got our cars. We the went and got our cars, and we the went and got our money back. But the recourse for the retail investor is to call the SEC, call the police, and say, officer, I gave this gentleman my money, and they have not given me the car. And you know what would happen? They would be in handcuffs. They would be under arrest, because nobody would put up with that. That is illegal, to sell somebody something you don't own. And the only industry where they can sell $2.2 trillion of something they don't own and never deliver it, and keep kicking the can down the road, keep giving you these fair to the livers, is in the securities industry. No other industry would this be allowed. So now you receive the title for the car, you've never received your car, and you go to the police, and the police won't help you. We get our shares, we complain to the SEC, but the SEC doesn't help us. So what do most retail investors do? The title for the car or the title for the shares is sitting in our account. And you know what we end up doing? We end up helping them kick the can down the road. Because what we do is we then sell the shares, usually at a loss, to some new retail investor. And then they want their shares. And then eventually they get tired. And then they sell it to another retail investor. So these bad actors can have these failure to delivers that they never, ever have to cover. You know why? Because the SEC, the supposed police of the securities industry, does not force them to turn over the shares. Does not force them to really deliver the shares. Just like the police would have forced them to deliver the cars or go to jail, these guys never deliver the shares. They never deliver the shares. And then we just sell to another retail investor, and it keeps on and on and on and on like a cycle. Okay? These guys are running the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world. If you were able to sell over $2 trillion worth of property you didn't own, I mean, you'd be a billionaire also, and never have to deliver it. And that's what the SEC allows. The SEC allows them to run a Ponzi scheme on the American public, not just the Americans, they do it to international investors also, and that is why the international investors have lost confidence in our stock market, and I personally believe it's a threat to our national security, but that's for another video. The bottom line is this: they run the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world. The SEC allows them to do it, and until this stuff is broken down and rebuilt, they're going to continue to rob retail investors. But I believe their liquidity when it comes to AMC is drying up, and they'll be forced to sell their longs, and they'll be forced to cover their short positions, and AMC and GME should go to the moon. Anyway, please leave some comments and tell me what you think about these bad actors able to just keep kicking the can down the road with the FTDs, never having to actually deliver the cars, ever having to actually deliver the shares, and just talking about their smart money, when in fact, they're just criminals. Anyway, have a great day. God bless, and I appreciate y'all on this journey with me.
That was Donahue George. Very passionate guy. Truly appreciate his perspective. Although I may not agree with everything that he says, this guy puts in endless amount of work and he does not sleep. And I don't believe he will sleep until this stock squeezes. So I'm glad to be on that side, man. Anyway, you hear that, $2 trillion. Now, I have to go out there and actually see that, but based on some of the reports, it's in that ballpark, right? So about $2 trillion worth of assets, securities that have been sold but not yet purchased. That's a lot of coin. And one thing that retail investors want, right, is that $2 trillion. It's just that point blank period. So if there's somebody in that room that represents us that is constantly asking themselves, well, what do they want? Like, what do they want? Why are they holding this stock? We want that $2 trillion. All right, hand it over. Like, we are the captains now. All right, you guys are holding something that doesn't belong to you guys. Like, we don't really care. Well, I'm going to talk from my perspective. I don't really care what the shares go, like how much the share sells for, like 500K. What I want you guys to buy my position, right, based on that squeeze price, not fair market value. There's this smaller hedge fund who doesn't agree with short squeezes. He would much rather like not participate or have his brokerage participate in a short squeeze, but sometimes it spills over to him. And then that's like the whole big corporations that do things to sort of ramp up a slave sort of labor force, right? Do a bunch of stuff, right, to expand their business and expand their power without putting in any work. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a way with this $2 trillion. There's no way that $2 trillion just disappears, right? It's like it appears out of nowhere because the feds printed it, right? It appears out of nowhere because they print it on demand, but you don't go from printing it and then it just disappears again. So hedge funds, market makers, them billionaires, the elites, they want to take that $2 trillion that was printed and pocket it in their pockets. We, on the other hand, we want that $2 trillion to be divided amongst us so that we can put it in our pockets. Now, here's the key. I've long said this, and then we saw the example. In my last video, we talked about how there was that great transfer of wealth. Well, temporarily. It wasn't really a transfer of wealth. It was retail investors getting paid, right? Or like your average Americans getting paid. And what did they do? They went out, they bought luxury goods, took trips, you know what I mean? Some of them scammed, right? Buying Lamborghinis and all these luxury goods, while others invested their monies to see a growth and participate in expanding this market. We did the responsible thing by putting our money to work for us. They took our money, right, without having to do anything. It's like, oh, the feds printed it. Let's use this tool to extract it from the retail investors. So one, right, tool that they used was the luxury goods, the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris, the LV bags, the Hennessy, you know, all the luxury goods. They took the money back from that realm. Then they were like, okay, that wasn't enough. Let's go after the retail investors, the person that wants to build wealth. Let's go and do that. So now they did that in the financial markets. Next, they were like, oh, there's another avenue that they want to build wealth. They want to buy homes. Let's raid the housing market now, right? Let's raid the pharmaceutical markets now, the defense markets. They're always going to go and raid a market, right? So it's going to be like that trickle down. And we want a fair shot at it. So to make a long story short, they got caught. Now they're trying to get us, this is all speculation, they're trying to get us to forgive this and let it just go. But we can't at this point. There's a lot that I'm just going to continue to dig. Shout out again to the Common Sense Investor, Donahue George. There's also New York Angelo, who's on the case. There's all these people who are like sticking around, and I like where their head is going because it sounds crazy when you think about it, but all evidence points to this, right? Now, we just saw with Tory Lanez, right, that you can lie, you can cheat, right? You can basically like win in the court of public opinion, and then, you know, you lose your trial, right? So like with him, like we're not going to go into what happened to him, but this is an example of how everything, all the evidence can line up in your favor, but you can still lose in the court of public opinion. So like when there are these hit pieces from your hedge funds or your mainstream media, you're like brushing it off like, oh, whatever, you know. No, they're influencing the masses. Like they're influencing your mom, your dad, your neighbor, right? But if you have these conversations and let them know like, yo, this is coming. Like I remember showing my wife like how, you know, I couldn't sell my a position that I was in because of the manipulation, right? And I'm like, yo, you now you see, right? She's starting to understand. So the more education that you can provide your family members or those who are like seeking to build wealth, the more you can provide them with this information, when they see the mainstream news lying to them, about like, oh, the apes or the retail investors are just crazy. They can just like go from a critical mind. Like, no, I saw that with my own two eyes. You can't just make it up, right? They're going to try to make up all types of shit. Don't let them get away with it. Because like they're raiding your pockets, whether you like it or not. When you see the price of insulin spike, when you see like the price of like your household goods spike, the reason why it's spiking is because they're raiding your pockets. Like there's an abundance of everything out here, but for some reason they want you to believe that everything is limited. They want you to believe that it's like limited, exclusive, like only a certain amount of people have access to this. No, that's not the case. You have access to it all. It's just that they're just stealing it from you, right? Like you can see it as clear as day with all the evidence out there. Like why would hedge funds need to borrow a stock at 138%? Like why? Ask yourself these little questions. Like why would they need to borrow this? Why is it taking so long? Like who's involved? Who are the players? Like everybody. Like again, I like these espionage type movies and shows, and like I can't discount Adam Aaron. I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I know people who have met him and spoke to him, but we're not in those rooms. Right? It's like I can't believe that the SEC or anyone hasn't approached him and had a conversation about this, like on a like, yo, this is ugly. We need your help to kind of rectify this. So I can't like absolve him yet. You know what I'm saying? And I like to believe that I'm a fair person. So I'm going to reserve judgment and just put the evidence out there and then connect the dots as it continues, right? As this journey continues. Because again, to borrow that quote from Steve Jobs, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So look at all the evidence that led up to this point and ask yourself these questions. Right? Start asking, not to get paranoid or anything like that. Just to get your brains churning. Like why hasn't this stock squeezed yet? Like why have all the reverse stock splits, like although it does go up, it doesn't show you, like based on the stock split, how much you initially invested, right? It just shows you the new price. And that's it. It doesn't show you how much you're down based on this split, right? So like ask yourself these questions, like why? So again, this video is for investigation purposes. We're going to continue to monitor these conversations. We're going to continue to investigate, do deep dives, and consolidate all that information here to like get us to start thinking and moving, because 2 years going on 3 years now, like no man, this shit should have popped off. Like retail want that $2 trillion that was printed within that 2-year span in our pockets, and now they're about to print 1.5 trillion now. And what's going to happen? The same thing. No, we want that $2 trillion. And there was that popular saying that if you divide all the money amongst everyone equally, it would always end up in the same pockets. So let's do that great reset. Let's divide it, that $2 trillion that y'all stole, put it in retail's pocket and see what we do with it. That's simple. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. And again, yo, if you have any information, if you're thinking about it in this way, like let me know, man, because I really think that there's like they're talking in the back room, they're negotiating their deals, and they're trying to cut us out of it. I don't know, but I ain't letting this slide. Run me my money, pay what you owe. All right. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to drink water, get money, mind your business.